You mentioned some of the, the traumas going on with mothers and children, and sometimes things passed through generations. And I know you've spoken about this before, but I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about your experience. I mean, you're going back to Budapest, I think today, and that was not the scene of the crime, but that was a big part of who you are today.
Yeah.
Maybe in a weird way, Gabor, a gift somehow. Maybe the current Gabor Maté at 78 years old that's got this incredible New York Times bestselling book that's, that's spinning around the world right now wouldn't have been born without these traumatic experiences, but they did happen in Budapest with your mother and the Nazis coming in there. Can you talk a little bit about that and your theories about how this is passed on through children?
Well, so let me tell you something incredible. I was in Budapest in May of this year as well. And I know that working out your body is very important to you. Well, I'm not a fanatic like you are, but
you're a daily swimmer, aren't you?
But I have to swim every morning so that my team always, there's a standing rule that wherever you book me into a hotel, there's got to be either a pool in the hotel or one nearby. Mm-hmm. So I was in Budapest in May, giving some talks, and around the hotel, like a block and a half away, there's a swim club that I passed to. So I went swimming every day. It took me 2 or 3 days to realize that the very building and the very paving stone outside the building, where in December of 1944, my mother gave me to a Christian woman in the street to convey me to some relatives in hiding, because I wouldn't have lived in that house anymore. I couldn't have survived in that house. It was directly across from the swimming pool. Wow. So I was swimming every day in this facility directly across the street from the house where I almost lost my life as an 11-month-old. I mean, who designed these things, So, but when my mother did give me to the stranger, a Christian woman, and that's another thing. This is an experience, the emotional imprint of which has affected me all my life. And I used to resent it so much. And it was actually during an ayahuasca ceremony, also in Budapest, maybe 6-7 years ago now, out in the field, under the starry Hungarian sky, that I realized that my mother giving me to the stranger was a complete act of love. Can you imagine a 24-year-old young woman and the Christian woman taking me to these relatives? That was another act of love. So that the thing that had been my biggest trauma was also a great act of love on the part of the universe.
That you experienced, those loving hands gave you and received you on that street that day, right?
That's right. But of course, the sense that I made of it as an infant, which is the only sense I could have made, was that I'm being rejected because I'm not lovable, that I'm being abandoned. Right. And that shows up in my marriage relationship. The first chapter opens with a scene that reflects that emotional imprint of the scenario of being rejected and how that plays out in my marriage. And in terms of passing it on to my kids, well, you and I talked about this. If we're out there trying to make ourselves important because we lack an internal sense of importance, if the message I get is, you're not important, I'm giving it to a stranger, you're not important to me, if that's how I interpret it, which is the only way an infant can interpret it, then I'm out there in the world trying to be busy and important and successful and significant in the eyes of the world. But what does that mean for my children? It means I'm not available for them. So what sense do they get the same message that I got? And this is how we unwittingly pass it on. And it's not because we don't love them, and it's not because we're not doing our best. Of course we are. But unwittingly, we transmit our traumas to the next generation until and unless we work it through. And I certainly hadn't. I hadn't even realized it when I had kids. So this is how the traumatic imprint gets passed on from a generation to the next unwittingly, and through nobody's fault, actually. There's nobody to be blamed. Your parents are not to be blamed, but the pain, nevertheless, is transmitted.
And in your relationship, you found that when you didn't get that kind of immediate acceptance, you would withdraw. You would somehow be reminded consciously or subconsciously of what happened, and you would stir up that same kind of anger. I think there's a point in the book where you talk about coming home from a flight. Again, you're Gabor Maté, the man, out here at a conference, and then you come home and your wife doesn't kind of give you what you're expecting, and so you withdraw.
She's not at the airport to pick. That's exactly it. So that, and that's what I did when I saw my mother again after, so I didn't see her for 5 or 6 weeks till the Soviet army expelled the Germans from Budapest. And when we were reunited, I didn't even look at her for several days. And the British psychiatrist John Bolt, he called that withdrawal, which is the child's organism protecting him. The organism says, you were so hurt when you were abandoned and rejected that you'll never open your heart again to that degree of vulnerability, which then becomes a lifelong pattern. So that means in intimate relationships, and particularly with my spouse, when I feel hurt, when I perceive that I'm hurt, even if I'm not, my tendency is to withdraw and to become sullen and unavailable.
Yeah.
And so that early imprint then shows up throughout my life until I work it through. But it's a lot of work to work it through.
Hey, it's Brian Rose, founder of the DeFi Academy. I've told you my 4-week crypto bootcamp is amazing, but don't take my word for it. This is what my students are saying.
The DeFi Academy was an amazing experience for me. It took me totally out of my comfort zone.
In this course, I was challenged, I was held accountable, and pushed to do things that honestly weren't always easy.
It's been phenomenal, and I can't believe we're already up on our 4 weeks. It has flown by.
Going through this DeFi accelerator by far was one of the best courses I've taken.
You do this course, you really get into the nitty-gritty of the activities that will make you comfortable with decentralized finance.
Thank you so much to Brian and everyone at London Real and the DeFi Academy for even putting together an amazing course like this.
Anybody else that wants to do it, please sign up. It is well worth the money.